go back to Facebook, and I am going to go live. So Phil, just to let you know, we're going to go live in 5 seconds, starting now.
Right. So, 3 of us in the same. 1:30.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Shireen, Program Manager at Stride, and welcome to our very first Facebook Live. This is super exciting, and we're hoping that all the technology is working correctly, so you will have to bear with us if there's any lags or any issues that that occur today. We're going to try to do as best as we can, and we're not quite sure of how many are on the line today, but we'd love you to engage with us, love you to hear your feedback and your comments. So please, at any stage, just write your questions into the comment bars. Be sure to like and of course share this if you like. And this will be posted onto the group after anyway. So if you can watch it again if you miss anything and share it after the interview. So we welcome you to the Stride Teachers Lounge, and the Strides Teachers Lounge is a new initiative by Team Stride, and we're really hoping to create this space exclusive for school faculty where we can really have our own personal tribe of teachers and well-being coordinators and everyone involved, principals, assistant principals, everyone involved with the schools, where we can really talk about school communities, share some resources, have these events, like this Facebook Live that we have now, and really create a community where we can discuss all these topics, well-being and more. And today we've got a really special friend of Stride Educations, someone that we've partnered with. Maybe some of you would have heard him speak last year at some of our events that we ran last year, but we have the wonderful Anthony Klarica who is joining us today. Anthony, thank you so much for making the time to be with us today. And it's really a pleasure.
Shireen, hi.
We've also got Philip Willan on the call today with us as well. And to Philip, lovely to work with you. Now, Anthony is a psychologist who really has been specializing in more performance and I think more of the kind of sports world as well as education. You've got an education background as well, which is fantastic, and really specializing in well-being and resilience building in the schools. And Anthony will get you to really introduce yourself in more depth. Philip comes from a wealth of educational background of 30 years as a principal in all different sectors, private, independent, and public. And Phil has a wealth of knowledge in the education world and is now really focused on well-being and educating school staff around well-being and leadership and tools to really thrive in the school world. And we're going to hear more from Phil later today as well. And Phil, you are our guest next month to talk about leadership in the schools, so we'll get to hear a little bit about that next month as well. But Anthony, we're going to kind of today, the idea of today was really to focus on well-being in schools and hear more a little bit about the 6-star well-being survey that we did introduce in our events last year. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself? Tell us more about, a little bit more than the brief intro bio that I gave you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what led to the creation of the 6-star well-being survey.
Well, thanks, Shireen. Hi, everyone. I think just to start with, Shireen, well done on setting up the Teachers Lounge. It's a more informal type of communicating, and I think with Zoom having a lot of professional development being on Zoom or other online sort of media, having an informal type of discussion like this is a really great concept. So nice to be here. Yeah, well, actually, I was thinking, Shireen, it's over 30 years ago, would you believe, that I was a classroom teacher.
Wow.
And that was a great experience after doing my BEd. And I moved from being a classroom teacher to deciding to focus more specifically in the wellbeing area, and then went on to finish or complete my psych education. And that was particularly in education and development. And I ended up from completing that study and getting registered as a psych to actually working in a hospital setting with children and adolescents, and from there progressed to working in multiple schools. And as you said, simultaneously along the way, I started working in sports. And part of the attraction to sports was that they're very proactive in the wellbeing space, Shireen. So what I was working with in that space ended up being paralleled back in education as I was doing assessments, dealing with issues. I've worked for the Department of Education as a psych, triple SO, contracted or consulted to a number of private schools, and been involved in education all along the way since I was a classroom teacher. So it's been a great journey.
Fantastic. And you really do. You have a wealth of tools and knowledge around how to really thrive in a well-being space. Tell us about the creation of the 6-Star Wellbeing Survey.
Yeah, well, thanks. The 6-Star Wellbeing Survey, I suppose, was the evolution of probably 20 years of working in education in the wellbeing space, and really being attracted to the proactive, preventative aspect of wellbeing. And while I was actually working in schools, trying to do one-off workshops and building, or more permanently in schools other than one-off workshops across a year or 2 years and so forth, I was also working in my own practice, seeing students one-on-one individually. And so that's really a tertiary referral from a school. And so you get a real insight when you're seeing students from primary and secondary school, and you get the referral from a teacher or wellbeing coordinator. You get a real insight to the wellbeing and the challenges of working with families to help assist individual students. And I suppose that really inspired me to try to have a broader impact across a whole wellbeing school community. And that's where the 6-Star started. I actually got asked by a specific school that I'd done a fair bit of contracting for, quite a large school. They'd actually undertaken for a year a unidimensional mental health screening of 2 year levels, year 8, year 9. And it was a depression screening, and they actually found that it didn't provide them with that much information. So they asked me to come in and support them with the data and with programs to promote the wellbeing of the students. And what they identified was that the survey that they used didn't provide them with enough evidence or information to really structure the programs that were relevant to their own cohort. So they asked me to go out and look at a range of tools. And as I said, this is potentially a decade ago. And I didn't really find anything that I felt comfortable using or recommending back to that school. So that's where the journey with developing a product began. And I spoke with teachers I knew, colleagues who were psychologists, schools I was working in, as I said, and used a lot of my experience in working with students one-on-one in real time to develop 6 categories that were really important, I thought, and that related to directly coachable subcategories. So the subcategories of the 6-Star survey that we landed on were mood, which relate to worry, which we know is important for students, and life satisfaction, because how they're going in life at or away from school is really important impact on their education and how they interact with teachers and students. Resilience, it's really important to build that skill. Engagement, which wasn't as big a decade ago, and is really belonging and engagement's enhanced and increased as a topic since then, Shireen. Communication, relaxation, because I worked with a lot of angry students, and it was a real challenge. It's a real challenge when you've got a grumpy, difficult, angry student. The impact and the ripple effect across a class or a cohort is quite impactful. So relaxation versus anger, and positivity, which really evolved as a category in the 6-Star from a lot of the positive psychology work relating to optimism and confidence. So we landed on the 6 subcategories. We built out the questions from there. I worked with some amazing people from RMIT University who did all the psychometric work on the properties, refined the tool over a period of time. And before I knew it, there were too many schools really for me to handle and work back with who were wanting to use the tool, which was overwhelming, to be honest, but tremendous at the same time. And therefore, I ended up engaging with ACER, who'd be an educational resource company that most people in education would be familiar with. They're not only in Australia, but they're around the world. And they took over the sale and distribution of the tool, which suited me perfectly because I'm not into sales necessarily. And that enabled me more space to develop the reporting features as we were getting feedback from schools about what they wanted in the report to us that would be useful from a practical level. So that was really, really important because as a practitioner and not an academic, to have something that teachers, wellbeing coordinators and psychologists, school leaders could use immediately from a coaching perspective to build and manage wellbeing programs. That's the whole idea of data, not to sit in the back office. It's to inform and implement programs and support individual students from as early as possible. That was the philosophy, and that's what started happening. So it was a great ride, and from there, Shireen, as I said, the response has been overwhelming. There's up to almost 30,000. I've got to check the data, but over the last bunch of years now, 30,000 students and staff and some corporates as well use the survey, because what evolved from the student version was a staff version where the 6 subcategories were paralleled, but with different items. So I can talk more about specifics of the survey, but I think that's probably enough background for now.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I love the strength-based approach of the survey, those 6 categories that you've spoken about. And like you said, the proactive and preventative approach, and really immediately giving us tools just in those 6 categories. It goes straight into understanding how we're going to intervene and create like what you call data-driven programs. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that there's definitely been a type of awakening, and a wave of, and let's call it a shift in well-being in the schools. Can you talk a little bit about that? What do you think of that shift in well-beings in schools, and how this relates to how these 6 components really relate to that?
Okay, it's a really good question and a good discussion point to give people a bit more insight. So the evolution of wellbeing really has shifted from what wellbeing was historically deemed from a medical model. So the absence of a problem or an illness meant that you had wellbeing. Now that's old thinking. The new thinking is that wellbeing is not only the absence of an illness or an issue from mental health or functioning or integrating perspective for a student, but it's actually the capacity to contribute, to thrive, to flourish, which is the positive psychology component. So historically, tools and surveys mirrored or mimicked the model that was present for the day. So hence the very first school that contacted me to consult with them. Historically, tools used to be unidimensional, so one single topic, a depression tool, and it would be typically used on targeted students who were identified to have an issue. So I call that a real deficits model, Shireen.
Yeah.
And what we want a tool to not only identify students who may be struggling so that we can intervene proactively. Early intervention is king in education, but to also identify strengths. And that's what people are still, I think, some schools getting their heads around. When you use something like the 6-star tool, you identify strengths within your cohort, but as well as deficits. So the positive psychology model, some tools only look at strengths. So one of the things that was important within the 6-star for me was to integrate mood, because that was still incorporating and respecting the importance of mental health and identifying potential issues that might need further screening or attention. And the relaxation subcategory, identifying potential or vulnerabilities to anger and susceptibility to remain calm, self-regulate emotions for students, which is a really important skill. So the survey looked to reflect the shifting model in wellbeing, which is really important. And you'll notice the 6 subcategories. That's what we call a multi-dimensional tool, not a single category. So those 6 subcategories were really important and had good, what we call face validity. They're appealing. Schools and teachers should feel empowered, not confused when they see categories that they've got to work with. Can a teacher or school influence mood? Yes. Resilience? Yes. Engagement? Yes. Can you build communication skills? Yes. Relaxation. So empowering coaching within the school and with external providers across a multi-dimensional range of aspects. That's another important thing. And the final thing is it's a universal tool. So it's applicable to the whole student population, not a single group. People talk about year 9s have challenges, or this class is really difficult, or this student is difficult. And as I said, historically, we'd have targeted instruments, but conducted internally or externally to the school. But this concept of a multi-dimensional tool for universal screening is what I love, because it takes away skepticism and concerns for students that might be targeted, and reduces stigma with regards to wellbeing. And that's a really important concept if you're looking to influence the whole school cohort. So you're educating and applying something to the whole school population, destigmatizes the topics within there, and then starts to empower students. And one of the things when you look at universal screening, one of the things that it does, and you're looking at whole student cohorts, when you improve the well-being of a whole cohort, you can actually elevate individuals, because you'll lift, if the well-being and the skills in each of those 6 areas I've mentioned, if the skills are enhanced from a social emotional learning perspective, from a data-driven program based on the data, you create a program, you build the skills of the whole cohort, that culture that you create will help vulnerable individuals as well as grow strengths in people that are already going okay. So that's a really important thing. So grow the whole cohort, help individuals. Enhance student-to-student interaction, enhance teacher-student interaction. That's what you're actually looking to do by developing skills. And as we said, the idea of the 6 star is you've got data-informed practices across the lifespan of a student. And that's where it comes from.
I love that. I love how that, you can really trace the lifespan of a student, as well as what you're talking about in the whole school community, that this can really apply to teachers and school staff as well. Really, really important. There's 2 things I want to ask you on what you were just saying there. Is one, I really want to understand a little bit more how it fits into the schedule.
Yep.
And I also want to understand, because I know there was you recently shared with me a fantastic article about how well-being really impacts academia, and I know that was a really kind of touchy subject in the past. Can you just talk a little bit more about those two points on? Let's start with like how well-being really can impact the academic thriving of a student, as well as how it fits into that schedule.
Sure. 2 great points, because for a lot of people, it's still quite challenging to fully immerse or integrate wellbeing education and spend resources, which is resources of time and money, not just money, but time, money, emotional investment and engagement into wellbeing, as well as academic results, NAPLAN, Year 12 scores, school retention, how all that data really, a lot of schools still feed on that. And that's understandable. And so therefore, vulnerable students with regards to wellbeing can impact that. So it's really important to understand that enhancing wellbeing, there's some amazing research done now. ACR itself, with Catherine Dixon, her colleagues, has identified, and there's lots of other examples I could give or you could read about from some of the writing I've done at another time. But up to a 10% increase in academic performance by enhancing social emotional wellbeing skills. And it's really interesting, an overlap. I was talking before about some of the people I see in my practice. I occasionally get referred Year 12 students who are underperforming in exams or struggling to cope with Year 12 or even Year 11. and even younger age groups as well. And when you start talking with those students, dealing with anxiety, organising themselves, how they cope with workload, demand, time management, all these, how they communicate with teachers, how they ask and seek help, which is actually one of the items in the survey. I can ask for help when I need it. My experience with those students individually reinforces to me that when you work on building and enhancing social and emotional skills, it can transition into an improvement in academics. But other than my one-on-one case studies and practical experience, there's lots of really good research that shows up to a 10% enhancement in academic outcome with a really thorough program. Now, by the way, a lot of programs focus on primary schools rather than secondary, but the data in this space actually shows that secondary schools can have equally, if not more, of an impact on students with programs, and that transferring into academic performance as well. So that's the academic side of it, Shireen.
And I really love that, because it's really an empowerment model, and it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win from a point of view of the school, who obviously their focus is their results and obviously student well-being. But then I think there's also this aspect of the focus on the student or the individual doing the survey, of that self-empowerment, where, you know, it was kind of stated in the article, I can't remember the exact words, but it was, you know, happy and confident kids learn better. And we actually have posted that article into the Teachers Lounge group, and we may just put it again there. So, because it was a fantastic article that really really substantiates what you're saying, and again just focuses on this empowerment model, which is what I really love, and, you know, really fit into Stride's model of, you know, what we called our 6 C's learning framework. All those components really connected really well with the Stride programs. And so, you know, it was a fantastic partnership. And, you know, what you spoke about there as well is being able to create programs that are relevant and impactful, and that, you know, because so many times a program can be a hit and miss, where I love this idea of utilizing the data to create a very specific program that speaks to student and school needs. So, you know, it's such a fantastic model. And I know we've partnered into what we've called our tailored, what we're calling this our tailored well-being approach of, you know, the discover, design, deliver, which means, you know, we'd use the data to discover the needs and what focus, and then design specific programs and deliver them accordingly. And then really being able to re-measure that program efficacy and see the growth of a student over the lifetime. And, you know, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and maybe Phil, maybe you'd like to have some input into this tailored well-being approach as well.
Yeah, it was Anthony's into data is king in schools, and well should it be. So to any school, they're wanting to understand the inherent needs, but as Anthony's alluded to, and this is very important, a lot of schools work within the positive education framework and the use of positive psychology. And Anthony's survey has the ability to identify areas of need for address, but also the opportunity to identify areas of achievement, and for students to be able to celebrate that achievement. And with success comes success. And schools have that balanced approach through the data that they can review. And that data then helps inform you in the types of programs that you integrate. And one school to another can be quite different in its inherent needs in collective. And the beauty of the 6-star survey is you can look at it on an individual student basis or a cohort of students. You can look at year level, you can look at gender. And that sort of information is really critical in understanding not just short-term but long-term growth and development, and improved engagement of students in their journey throughout the school. And you can use that information and data as a whole school wellbeing program should be for all persons involved in the development of the child, the teacher, the school itself, the child and the parent. You can use that information as we have and I've had the privilege of, when working with Anthony, to inform parents of the information, the understanding of the achievements of their child, the areas of their life that they're really flourishing, and celebrate that, and perhaps even also identify areas where there may be some need for address. And then as parents and as a school, we can work collaboratively with a uniformed understanding about how to best support that child ongoing.
Yeah, well, Phil's just, sorry, Shireen, Phil's just alluded there to actually coming back to one of your earlier questions. The second part is, how do you fit something like this into a school curriculum and timetable, which is a really important thing. We've spoken about academic development, but that shouldn't necessarily be the driver or reason, and I wouldn't think or expect that it would be. That's a side effect and side benefit. The real driver is to enhance the social emotional wellbeing and development of young people within your school environment so they can go and contribute to the community. And if a school can do that, that's tremendous. So that gives you a clue to how to integrate it into a timetable, and Phil's alluded to it from a whole school perspective, but it's easier to fit into a school's schedule, which is cram-packed, we understand, if leaders embrace wellbeing as a deliberate rather than incidental development process. And I like to think about 5 pillars that schools can embrace to get their heads around wellbeing and give them a smooth path to create programs. And it actually starts with school leadership, because school leaders embracing whole school wellbeing is a really important concept, because once you embrace something, it becomes part of the program. And if you feel like you don't need to rush it all in one term and that it's an ongoing part of your program, it actually takes pressure off you. If it's over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, as we said, the lifespan of a student, it actually creates some breathing space for you to integrate it into your programs. But the first part is leadership, including leaders allocating specific wellbeing staff in a proactive way rather than just dealing with reactive issues. So that's really important. And then part 2 would be staff education and engagement in this wellbeing space. And that's a really important part. A lot of people go straight to students, and I think leadership and staff first, and the staff being educated about wellbeing, and as we suggested earlier, don't have to, but doing their own survey, which is anonymous and de-identified, to get a feeling of the wellbeing of staff. Because if you invest in staff wellbeing, that's going to transition into students too. But then the third part after leadership and staff is collecting data for students, and as I've mentioned, for staff. And then based on the data, implement and drive or inform programs. And there's a range of ways based on resources that schools can do that. I don't think it should be compelled upon a school as to what they should do. Schools can determine that internally or potentially with external support. But once the data is undertaken as part 3, and then student support is built into the program, part 4, then part 5 is whole school engagement, and that's what Phil was referring to earlier as well. Parents and carers, the language that you use around the school. I found it really interesting going into schools at lower levels and understanding the depth of wellbeing literacy that students do or don't have. For example, do Year 7 students really understand resilience? Are they familiar with the terminology in the word? Are they familiar with the meaning? Are they familiar with examples in general? And can they relate to their own examples of when they've been resilient? So that's the depth of the language and the narrative that you can use when we talk about whole school engagement. So parents and carers being informed about the program, about de-identified data, so they understand that there's care and emphasis and energy being put into their students in this space. The language and incidental wellbeing development as well. It's amazing when you start working on topics like the 6-star topics, for example, how even in a maths class, you can integrate positivity if students have a negative approach to that. So incidental wellbeing management, other than just deliberate, creates part of the whole school focus. And then we come back to reinform, get feedback, and back to the first pillar out of those 5 I've mentioned with the leaders. if that makes sense, Shireen.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I love how you broke that down there, and I really see the long-term culture development of the program and the survey. So, I think moving forward, like you said, it gives everybody that well-being literacy and deeper understanding and development of it. Now we are reaching the end of our time together. We could easily keep talking about this. There's so much that we are that we can talk about. So just a couple things. Can you also just mention how schools can find out more about the survey and book the survey? Because although Stride is working alongside the survey, the schools normally buy the survey or purchase the survey individually as well. So can you just talk a little bit about that? And then I also want to ask you and Phil about the upcoming event in March. So if you can just quickly just tell us more about where schools can get hold of the survey or find out more.
Sure. One of the great things about ACR taking on the survey is that their team is how you book the survey through, and you could visit ACR, or you can visit the 6-Star Wellbeing website, the w6starwellbeing.com.au. It's got a lot of information there, as well as ACR contacts. And typically a school would identify an administrator who would purchase credits based on the size of the school. That's quite cost effective. It's not an exorbitant cost to the 6-Star. It's a real volume type of program, not a high cost program, I don't think. And work with ACR to purchase it, and then schools can independently administer and conduct within ethics and privacy policies within their own schools the survey to collect the data, and work with organisations such as Stride to assist them with programs and all the data.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'll put all of that into the post with this video that will sit on our page that people can watch and put in questions that we can follow up after if we're not getting any questions live.
Yep.
So can I ask you guys, Phil and Anthony, if you both, we have an event coming up on the 3rd of March, which I'll also put the link for that event. Can you tell us a little bit about that event? Because that's really about social emotional learning and well-being in schools and how to implement these programs in schools. Can you tell us a little bit about that event coming up?
Yeah, we're certainly looking at it from an evidence-based perspective, the importance of including social emotional learning within the school curriculum timetable, and that language that the whole school uses. We look at the impact, not just at school, but also as these young people move into the community and make their contribution as young adults. The skills that they acquired during the process of social emotional learning obviously contributes to their social emotional well-being, enables them to become more engaged and improve their relationships, not just the academic focus, but many aspects of their life that do flow into later life. But we look to assist schools in giving understanding of what a quality social emotional program would look like, how to best deliver and implement it, what sorts of resources you would use, and the way that you could upskill and empower staff to deliver those programs.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I think it covers it all. I'm looking forward to presenting with you on that session. I suppose, in summary, it's why social emotional learning and wellbeing is so important, and then we'll talk about the how.
Yeah, fantastic. Now that's going to be an online event, and I will put the link for how people can join that event as well, which will be fantastic. Thank you both so much for taking the time to launch our Teachers Lounge. Hopefully the tech has all worked, and I look forward to working with you guys this year. And Phil, we're going to hear more about the more of the programs and your leadership model next month. And is there anything else that you guys would like to say before we finish up?
Well, one interesting consideration working with Anthony, I've realised through this process of the Teachers Lounge is that I came into a school where Anthony was already part of the school in delivering programs. But typically my experience had been that the psychologist was in an office distant from the main school building, and no wonder there was a stigma attached in being referred. But Anthony played an active role within the day and the school life of those students, and the importance of the program and the sorts of skills that he was teaching the children became something that wasn't just a separate, when you have problems you use, but a part of everyday life and flourishing and being successful in whatever pursuit, whether it be sport, academic or otherwise.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really good, really good. Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thank you, Shireen, for having me as a guest on the Teachers Lounge.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for making your time. I know you're really busy, and we really, really appreciate you taking the time for us. And we will be posting all those links into the comments and into the Teachers Lounge. And we will see you guys again next month for our next interview. And please, please let us know if you have any topics or any ideas that you'd like us to speak. We look forward to a lot of engagement in the group as well, which will be great. So thank you very much. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great night.
All the best. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Did you want to stay on and chat, Shireen? Or?
I just want to make sure I'm not live streaming anymore.
Yeah.